Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of An Evolved Review. I'm your host, James Caleb Kitchens, and as always, I'm joined by none other than the man that watches more wrestling content than anyone in the known universe, Caleb Stovall. How's it going, man?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Man, what you been up to? I know we had a little break. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about, but I know that you have been telling me that you have a specific podcast that you've been checking out or that you're looking forward to checking out, rather.
Yes. I just found out about this. I think it was this past week or something like that, as we are recording. But I'm a member of the ad-free shows thing, and I also follow, a lot of the Conrad podcasts because a lot of them are just really, really good in general. And they announced that he has another new podcast coming, and it is going to be with none other than Jeff Jarrett.
Oh wow, yeah, that's
Yes,
going to be impressive. You know, Jarrett's a
yes.
talker. He has a lot of stories.
It's going to be called My World. Uh, so it's
Naturally.
so it's probably going to have his TNA theme song in it. I guess as the opening theme song or something like that. Obviously, and sorry, on ad-free shows, they had Conrad and Jeff Jarrett do kind of a Q&A thing about what it was going to be like. And it pretty much is what I think it's going to be, which is what I'm excited about. And that is that they're going to go through all of Jeff Jarrett's career and whatnot. Yes, they're going to go through his WCW, the time where he supposedly held up Vince McMahon for money, all that sort of stuff, even his early days in Memphis wrestling and stuff like that. But then it's going to talk about what I am most looking forward to, and that is obviously TNA.
Yeah, I mean Jeff Jarrett has an incredible perspective on TNA since its inception, I think, and
Yes.
probably a perspective that nobody else has. So that's
Oh
going
yeah.
to be incredible. Um,
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it so much because I'm so sick and tired of every time I hear Bischoff and Bruce Pritchard talk about TNA. It's almost like they're bashing just almost anything and everything that they if they weren't involved in it, that is.
right? Yeah, the stuff they were personally involved in was gold, as we
Yeah,
all know.
right. And
Gold, just like everything that Vince Russo was involved in was always gold.
oh yeah, exactly. And I that's another thing I am interested in hearing about on this podcast is there's going to be questions of Vince Russo that come up because they worked together half of his career and stuff like that. So that's going to be interesting too. I can't wait to see it. I'm just excited about this podcast. This is probably going to dominate my playlist of podcasts and stuff like that.
Well, that sounds good. I don't want to spend too much time on it. We'll definitely circle back around once
Yeah.
we've had a chance to listen to it. But listen, so the next couple of weeks, probably the next 2 months, we're going to be covering what we're talking about right here tonight, as you can see it on the screen if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. But this is going to be the coverage of the A&E original biography series about the WWE legends. And tonight we're going to talk about the very first episode that aired, which is the Stone Cold Steve Austin episode. I think it's very smart for them to start with this one because Stone Cold is one of the most famous people on earth. That being said, before we get into the weeds, I do want to say that we had an incredible experience. This is not the first episode that we got to see. Very shortly, we're going to be putting out our Booker T episode. We actually got to go to the premiere of this. We got to get a little championship belt, which we're calling the Evolved Review Championship.
Yeah.
I don't have it with me, but I promise it will make an appearance here shortly on one of these episodes.
Oh, you are not prepared.
So actually, it's out. It's actually out in the car. I had to put it away because I didn't want it to get damaged as I was transporting like half of my belongings back to Thompson for the show this last weekend. Don't want to get into all of that, but still, we had an incredible experience. We got to go see the very first episode that I guess that aired anywhere, which was the Booker T one. We got to go to this awesome drive-in theater. Everything was WWE'd out. It was just such a great experience. So we're gonna have an early review of that. Very cool, very awesome thing that we got to do there.
Yes.
Um, but tonight we're going to be talking about the very first episode that aired. You can watch this episode if you haven't seen it. It's really good. If you have A&E, you can watch it on there. If you have a valid like cable login, you can watch it on there as well. You can also watch the A&E, watch it for free on the A&E app, even if you don't have a valid login. I have a Shield TV, which is an Android device, and I watched it on there. So I grabbed the A&E app, and I was able to watch it for free on there. It is ad supported, but I couldn't really find anywhere else that had it. Maybe
Hulu.
yeah, I don't have Hulu. You have to have the Hulu plus live TV, I think, right?
No, all you have to do is have a Hulu account and you can watch it. I guess for like the regular price and stuff like that.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, well, that's good to know. Then I actually have Hulu, and I could have just done that, but that's what I'll do next. Um, so this was a good thing for them because this came on Sunday night, which would have been the 18th. Yeah, this came on the 18th, and they actually were number 6 across all cable networks on Sunday night. Um, which Stone Cold Steve Austin is used to dominating the ratings, right? The 2 hour special aired at 8 p.m. and it drew just a little over 1 million viewers. So you got to think about that. This is a documentary special, and it still drew more than most of. It still drew more than NXT or AEW is drawing on a regular basis, and it's just a documentary about one
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
So just to get started, what's your like overall thoughts about their choice to go with Steve Austin first, and then just your overall thoughts on the presentation of this episode.
Oh, I loved it from start to finish. The opening to me could not have been any more perfect to his documentary, which is, who is Steve Austin, the performer, versus Steve Austin, the wrestler. And he just literally just goes, I don't know if there is a difference really. And I was just like, oh, like I knew like when I saw that opening, I was like, okay, this is going to be amazing right off the bat. I loved it and stuff like that. It's not surprising to me though that this drew more eyeballs than Dynamite and NXT and Raw and anything modern right now, because again, that was just such a pivotal time in the wrestling business. People could say the Attitude Era or whatnot, but the Monday Night Wars in general, man, I mean, they changed the business forever. The business has never been the same since those two companies went to war, basically. I mean, they basically have World War for wrestling. That's
Right.
basically what it was. But people just don't, I think people just forget how big it was back then. And I mean, they touched on it. Stone Cold Steve Austin was not just a wrestling superstar. No, he
Right.
was a pop cultural icon.
Well, yeah, it's like I think Jericho said it the best, and we'll definitely get into this later on a bit more. But Jericho said it on Broken Skull Sessions just recently, right after WrestleMania. To have somebody like a Andre or a Hogan or a Cena or somebody like that is 1 in 1 million. They were lucky enough to have two at the same time in The Rock and Stone Cold, and I like that this documentary, and this will be common throughout this documentary series. I think we always see this all through the WWE lens. It's always what was important and what was special to the WWE, right? It's never really about the person. Because if this was about, if WWE had done this documentary, first off, I don't think you get that opening, very candid look where he's like, "Oh hell, I don't know," I
Yeah.
don't know the difference. I don't think WWE goes to that. Secondly, I think WWE would spend a lot more time on, okay, well then this is where he went and faced Bret Hart, and there was this big double turn in that match. And then the next time, Mike Tyson got involved. And, that we've just seen it over and over again. They would
Right.
have talked about the Shawn Michaels thing, the DX thing, and this focused solely on Steve Austin or Steve Williams, and just like his journey and what was important to him, not necessarily what was important to the business. And that's why I think that this is going to be a unique perspective, because WWE has done a special on all these guys.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that was the thing. I don't have to analyze Austin at all to know that what he is saying is pretty much the truth. Like, I don't have to question it. Like, he's very honest. You can tell that. He has no problem telling it like it is, which was exactly how Stone Cold did it.
Yeah.
Like, Stone Cold not only changed the business from a character standpoint and everything, he changed those rules that you're not supposed to do. Like, baby faces were never supposed to break the rules, to cuss, to do anything else. They were supposed to be Superman, squeaky clean, and everything like that, like Hulk Hogan and stuff like that. And Steve Austin, he got over by being a heel. He's like really the first one to do it other than the NWO.
Well, and the thing about it with Austin though is he was doing things that he wasn't necessarily being a heel, but he was doing things that baby faces weren't supposed to do.
Yeah,
The NWO were absolutely being completely heels. They were cheating constantly and things like that. Austin, on the other hand, just didn't give a damn,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And like the closed fist punches is one of the things that's finally now, I think, getting a little bit back out of the industry. But for probably 15 years after Austin left, you would see, because everything that's at the top reverberates all the way down through the indies, right? You would have baby faces throwing these closed fist punches constantly,
Yeah,
and kind of it kind of changed the wrestling mindset of like that's even a thing. Like, a lot of people just didn't even remember that throwing a closed fist punch was illegal in a wrestling match,
yeah,
and it was something that a heel should do. We talked extensively about Ring of Honor's Pure Rules, and that's something that they helped reintroduce. I think today you see a lot more baby faces throwing forearms and chops and things like that, rather than what Stone Cold would do, which was come out there and beat you senseless with his fists.
yeah. And that's so funny because even wrestling fans, a lot of wrestling fans, especially in today's market, uh, prefer the 5-star, Kenny Omega, dare I say it, Okada type fights and whatnot, or the 6 stars or whatnot. But it's funny because Stone Cold Steve Austin has a 5-star match, and it really wasn't that technical
Yeah.
whatsoever. And I mean, I'm glad that they didn't really go into it, but I will never forget that feud with Bret Hart because it was incredible. First of all, that was a whole different dynamic in and of itself because you had Bret Hart, who was a heel over here in the USA, but he was a face, like he was, God basically in Canada. I mean,
And elsewhere in the world. A lot of people
yeah,
forget that Bret Hart was an internationally traveled guy.
yeah,
People talking about U.S., Canada a lot. Okay, Bret Hart was he was one of I think, the last people to really tour internationally, like the way that like Ric Flair did, or people before him, or the way like a Bruno Sammartino would have done.
yeah,
Bret Hart was a global phenomenon, and then once kind of the Attitude Era started, the WWF would still do overseas tours, but it was mostly like, you're now working for the company. So and so's territory in Uzbekistan isn't calling you up and going, "Hey, we want the WWF champion to come here and wrestle a match," or whatever.
yeah.
That's not happening anymore.
Oh yeah, exactly. And Brett was, he was big over there, but yet he was hated in the USA, and it made for this very interesting storyline. Also made for a very unique pay-per-view when they did Canadian Stampede. That's probably one of the most unique pay-per-views I've ever seen in my life, because all of these bad guys basically are getting this massive, huge reaction. But even though they still tried to make Stone Cold the bad guy over there in Canada, they still cheered for him. I
Yeah.
mean, everyone just resonated with him. And here was the thing. Here was what I loved about Stone Cold Steve Austin that no one seems to do nowadays. He never came out there. It was just like, this is my dream to be a pro wrestler,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. I'm living my dream. Please be happy for me and everything like that. Like, so many people do that. And it's like, we get it. You're living the dream. What are you doing with it now? Kind of thing. And he never had to do that. He was just literally, everyone knew he was living his dream, but everyone wanted to take that ride with him.
The infamously terrible Tony Deppen Pure Tournament promo. My wife and my kids are at home and they're rooting for me. And yeah, we don't have to get into all of that. But yeah, I mean, you never saw him do that. And he was a
Right.
character that people believed in, right? Because he got to go to work and kick the shit out of his boss, which is something that your lower and middle class American, or
Right.
really in any country, can relate to that.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, if
And
if any of us could get away with it, well, we'd kick our boss in the face at least one time.
oh, yeah, I'm sure we would. But he got to do it, every night. And dude, I'm going to tell you right now, I love going back and watching a lot of the Attitude Era stuff. And it's not for the reasons that everyone says it is. Oh, it was so edgy, blah, blah, blah. No, it's just because every segment that Austin was in and a lot of the other stuff is, I'll have to admit, some of the best stuff I've ever seen written for television.
Right,
Like,
and a lot of that too, though, goes back to ECW. That one promo that they aired, and you never see this in any of the WWE stuff, because in all the WWE stuff, they want to act like it was completely their idea. But if Paul Heyman brings a completely useless to him guy onto his program who's injured, can't do anything. I just want you to come talk.
I guess well, because he worked with him in WCW.
Right.
Austin became part of the Dangerous Alliance, which could have been so much bigger than what it was, but it's WCW. Back then they didn't know what they were doing and stuff like that. So I am guessing during that time period, Paul got to know, I should say, Austin, and I'm guessing he saw it before anyone else.
As Paul Heyman does.
Exactly. Like he probably was spending a lot of time with him and was just like, there's something there and I can bring it out and stuff like that.
Right.
So, but well, here's the thing, because they did the Austin documentary for WWE, obviously his WWE one, and they did mention that promo. Like they mentioned that. I don't think they put emphasis on that
Right.
particular promo.
They don't highlight it as the catalyst for what would become the Texas Rattlesnake. So,
Exactly.
that's the difference to me, because really that promo does it. He doesn't cut that promo, we aren't sitting here and talking about this today.
True.
Speaking of things that would prevent us from sitting here talking about this, so Mick Foley said that best. They're talking about the possible names that they had for Austin, and these were horrible. I mean, I'd never heard these before. I mean, when he came in as the ringmaster, that was cool, right? That's a cool thing, but like,
Is it
but
though?
yeah, I think it is, especially for that time. But I mean, the thing when they were, Ice Dagger, and I mean, some of these were just awful. Fang
Dang McFrost.
McFrost, yeah, Otto
Oh,
Von Ruthless.
yep. Otto von Ruthless, Chili McFreeze.
That last one, that's awful. I mean, that just goes to show you. I was listening to them rattle those names off, and I was like, has WWE creative just always been just as bad as it is today? It's just that the talent won't stand up to them anymore. Is
I
that is that what it is? Because I'm going to tell you straight up. If they debuted a character on Raw on Monday called Chili McFreeze, I wouldn't bat an eye.
and the fact of that he got this idea, which I wanted to get your take on, because I he's mentioned this before. He went into a little bit more detail, and they actually showed some footage of it. But he got the idea for this character while watching the serial killer documentary for Richard Diklinski.
Right.
And I wanted to get your thoughts on that, like, because you've been in the wrestling business for a long time, a lot longer than I have, and stuff like that. You know, a lot of the guys behind the curtain. Do they, a lot of the times these days come up with their characters while watching movies and, other stuff and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, everybody draws inspiration from the things that they like,
Right.
right? You take a look at, so it's pretty famous now. It's all over the place. Look at the Darius Lockhart promo from Viral Pro Wrestling from last week. Right, it just came out. If you're watching this and you're not familiar with them, check out the Viral Pro Wrestling Facebook page, and it's on there. Right, when you look at that promo, if you sit and think about it, the mannerisms, the way he speaks, it's Denzel from Training Day, but as a wrestler, right? Somebody else said it's like if Thanos hosted Soul Train, which I thought was hilarious.
That's great.
You look at so you go go on up New Jack, right? He talks about how he got the name from New Jack City.
Yeah.
There's always things that are in your life, whether they're entertainment based or not, that you're going to draw that inspiration from for your character. So
Right.
Everybody says this a million times. Ever since Austin and Rock, everybody loves to spew out that line of like, the gimmick is just that guy, but blown way up. There's an element to that's it's all of your life experiences put together, and it's the things that you like and enjoy, and you're going to draw a little bit from that, right?
Right.
Just like with The Rock, it's hard because he's such a unique person, right? It's so hard to envision anything, being his inspiration, but there it is. So yeah, I mean, today it definitely still happens. Whether they're drawing that inspiration from wrestlers that came before them, or whether they're drawing it from something in the entertainment industry or the music industry, it comes down to theme music, right? It's rare that somebody is going to pick theme music that they wouldn't listen to on their own.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Almost to a fault sometimes, but I don't have time to go out on that rant.
we be all night.
Yeah. Yeah, we just don't have time.
But I love like when they showed some of the Richard Diklinski shots and you saw Richard Diklinski like walking. Did that not look like how Austin walked?
And that walk is so important to his character.
Yes.
And this is something that I try to get the guys I work with all the time now. Like, everybody wants this long, epic intro to their music, right? I mean, the average, right, for a wrestler on the indies is a 10 to 30 second lead in. 10 to 30 seconds. Okay, for like a big match or something, like WrestleMania or whatever your company's biggest show is, you've had this long feud and this is the blow off match. Sure, cool. Do something spectacular. Have this special long drawn out entrance. But if you got 30 seconds on the beginning of your entrance music, the first time people will pay attention to it. After that, every time you come out, they're like, this guy's got a 30-second intro. I got time to go to the bathroom, or I got time to be on my phone, or whatever, and you've lost them right off the bat. You have put yourself in a terrible situation. When they say this all through this interview, and it's so absolutely true. When that damn glass hit, you knew he was coming out of that curtain 90 miles an hour.
Yeah.
When that glass, it was like he was standing in Gorilla, and he just could not wait for the music to hit so he could storm through that curtain.
Yeah.
And it made people pay attention, and it made people believe him. And I always today try to get guys, to do something like that where it's like, find something where as soon as the music hits, you're through the curtain because nobody else does that.
Yeah. I mean, I even saw it while working, well, still working behind the curtain myself. Like, I see it all the time. I'm just like, good Lord, like, this guy takes forever getting to the ring, and it's just like you've already lost the crowd at that point, like you said, because they're just like, hey man, we don't want to wait this long. Let's get
Yeah.
with action, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean everybody shouldn't do that, but
Oh well, yeah,
everybody shouldn't do anything, right? Like you've got to differentiate yourself from somebody else. It's like a lot of people are very a lot of people feel like wrestlers ought to be in tights, right? Trunks, tights. Well, Austin would wear trunks sometimes, but sometimes he would come out in those god awful tight cut off jean shorts. But it differentiated him. It was something you could see his character doing.
yeah,
Cena ended up doing the same thing later. Um, I think if you can stand out, sometimes that's more important than being traditional.
yeah,
Um, but it really just depends on how you execute it. And in Austin's case, everything about his character was believable to a large audience. There were people that didn't even like wrestling at the time that liked Stone Cold Steve Austin. There were people that
yeah,
thought wrestling was this absolute fake joke, which, I mean, it is staged. Obviously, they were correct in that aspect, but there were people at the time that thought because it's staged that it was a joke,
yeah.
and those people, for the most part, still were obsessed with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like they believed this guy, because how could you not?
Well, and it goes back to even the old days of pro wrestling, even when um, Austin was a fan of wrestling. I believe it was Blackjack Mulligan that said, well, it could have been him or it was someone else. I can't remember exactly, but they said, if I believe it, then it's real.
Right.
And that's exactly what Stone Cold did. He believed that he was Richard DeKlinsky, basically. I
Yeah.
mean, let's be honest. That's who Stone, like, he believed he was Stone Cold.
Right.
And you
And
can tell that honestly by his interview in this episode, just
right.
by him today, that he's still Stone Cold.
Right. Yeah, absolutely to this day. And that brings me to another quote by James Drake, a much more recent quote that I can't make you believe that wrestling is real, but I can make you believe that I'm real.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's what Austin did for the vast majority of people, because the whole wrestling stage nonsense has been going on for a long time. A lot of people have seen through the cracks and whatever. I mean, we covered the Dark Side of the Ring episode on it, so um, go look that one up. It's a good one. But
Yeah.
there have been people trying to expose the wrestling business, just like there's people that have been exposing magic acts for years and years and years and years. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So
And that's okay, because even when people go to a movie, right? Here, I'll give you a perfect example. In the Marvel series, which is only the biggest franchise right now in movies, currently, but probably their most important character, Iron Man, Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. Did he not like take that role and basically make it him?
right, yeah, absolutely,
So it's the same exact thing, pretty much.
yeah, yeah. That's a great point. He absolutely did that, and it's hard for you to envision somebody else being them.
Exactly. Like even my stepbrother, who's a big comic book fan, he's even made the statement. He's like, every time I read an Iron Man comic book, I can't help but envision Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark.
Right. Yeah, and it's kind of the same thing here. It's like there have been a lot of people who have tried to sort of mimic that Steve Austin magic. I mean, Becky Lynch, for example, Kevin Owens as well. and it's cool to see it work for some people where they take little elements of his character and people kind of resonate with that. But there's just a lot with that character that it's going to be hard to do again. It's lightning in a bottle,
Yeah.
and they got it twice at one time. So I now I do want to dig a little more into that and talk about how much I really like that this particular documentary focused on the Rock and Austin's connection in the ring, but also out of the ring, because their chemistry was just incredible. I mean, a lot of people consider those to be like blueprints for how you pull off an amazing main event wrestling match. I mean, some of those are considered to be the best matches of all time by a large amount of people.
Yeah. Yeah, they really are, and it's because they just had that magic. I'll give you one that I thought was better that no one talks about really, which is their WrestleMania rematch at Backlash 99, which Austin even said is better than the Mania 15 match because Austin was in a better headspace going into that match than he was WrestleMania.
Yeah, that is a great one. I think the one my favorite is the one at 17, but as we've talked about, everybody hates it because of how it ends. Um, but I don't want to go into that one now. I
I
am
like everything up until the ending.
right. I don't. I'm surprised they didn't talk about that at all, like the heel turn in this. But once again, that circles back around to this is not a wrestling documentary; it's a documentary about a wrestler, and that's what I love about their perspective on things.
Yeah.
So they talk a little bit about their chemistry in the ring. He wanted The Rock to be the person he passed the torch to. Austin's an old school guy. On his way out, he wanted to kind of he wanted to put somebody over, which I thought was incredible. I love that he chose The Rock to do it because they when the WWF put them on a collision course with each other, that was it. That
Okay.
that was money every time, and it lasted for years.
Yeah.
And there's no way to beat it.
Oh,
But
yeah, absolutely. The only thing that comes close to it, but it wasn't a wrestling rivalry, which is something interesting that I'll bring up a little bit later on, but Austin versus McMahon.
right. And there's no way we could review this episode without talking about that.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, how many times was the main event on Raw not a match, but an Austin and McMahon segment? Because that was going to be the highest viewership.
Yeah, and that's also like how most of the Raws started and everything like that. I mean, you had some of the most memorable segments with those two, but and it's so funny because it's not a wrestling storyline if you think about it. It's really not. It's a TV storyline, but it was so well done that it checks all boxes basically.
Right. Absolutely. And it was like a TV drama scenario.
Yeah, it really was, and like they said, everyone could relate to it.
Right.
It again, Austin didn't have to come out. Oh, this is my dream. The man is trying to take it away from me. It's just we all got that, kind of thing, and it just it worked on so many levels, and they had such great chemistry. But I know you're probably dying to talk about. Well, first of all, Mr. McMahon, the character is nothing like me.
I think Mr. McMahon, the character, is everything like him. I think it's exactly him, and just as much as Steve Williams is Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh, and also his the real stooge of WWE, who's going to probably be in every single documentary from here on out in this series. Brother Love.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, that was going to be my next question for you.
Okay.
What do you think about the guests that they had on here to talk about this? You know, Pritchard was on here. Of course, did they have Jr. on here?
Yes.
They had Jr. talking about him, but I feel like that's all old footage.
No.
So they
No.
actually got him in studio for it.
Yeah, that's definitely in studio because that's A&D's footage.
Gotcha. Well, that's
So
good.
and this was, I guarantee you, this was not shot like 5 years ago or so. So this is definitely when he's under contract with AEW.
Well, I know the documentary is all fresh, but I just thought maybe some of the Jim Ross footage they were using seemed like it might have been, from before. But
No.
if not, that's fantastic. I think there was a lot of backstage stuff here that hadn't been seen before, that had been
Yeah.
shot previously. But
Yes. Yes.
anyway, what do you think about the guests that they had on? Is there anybody that you thought we would see and we didn't, or anybody that surprised you that did show up?
Well, you had to have JR because him and Austin are great friends, and he was probably Stone Cold's biggest fan. You could tell that even on commentary. But here's my thing about JR, and it's an issue that I have with him on grilling JR. Um, why does he always sound like a cranky old man with everything? Like just even the way he's talking about Austin. It was real. You actually believed it. Like he's literally shouting at the camera at one point. I'm just like, JR, calm down. We get it.
I think I think it's a combination of maybe it may have to do with his Bell's palsy that he has. He may have to put extra effort in, but I think what it probably mostly
Right.
is his years and years of shouting at ringside, and doing commentary. Also, he's had to commentate about 150 hours of wrestling with Excalibur sitting right next to him, so that would turn me into a pissed off old guy too. And he actually is an old guy, so it wasn't a tough transformation.
This is true. This is very true. I'll tell you the guest that I was surprised to hear from that I actually have never heard in any Stone Cold documentary for WWE, which is his family. Like
Yeah,
we saw his, like, I didn't even know that he actually had siblings. Like
yeah. Never seen his brother on anything.
I never like, and you saw both of them. You saw his older and his youngest, I think, and then his sister. I was like, what? Like,
I thought the Adam Cole being in it for like 10 seconds was weird. I guess they just wanted to show like an up and coming person who admired him or whatever. But they,
yeah,
like Kevin Owens was in it for a little bit. I liked how much of Undertaker was in it. I love that now that he's talking and he's retired and out of character. Like he's on everything.
oh yeah, absolutely, and that's basically what he's been doing this whole time. And if it funny because it started with Austin. I'll say this: how good this was is like I can't wait to see Mick Foley's, and he was in it. And I guess you have to have Foley in it because he was involved in a lot of stuff with Austin.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he was involved in a lot of stuff with everybody back then.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So I
Mick Foley
was
tangled with everybody in the WWF in the Attitude area or era.
thank thank God though in this episode, and I was waiting for him to show up, but thank God he did not show up in this episode. Sam Roberts,
Yeah.
which we'll get into later on. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Get ready for the Sam Roberts in the Booker T episode, folks, and
uh,
and hopefully just that one. So I want to go ahead and start wrapping it up here. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about kind of Austin's path towards his exit when he's starting to get fed up with the industry. A lot of this started. They didn't really cover this in the episode, but a lot of this started going into WrestleMania 18, the
yes,
match with Scott Hall. He felt like everybody else, like so Triple H and Jericho have the undisputed title match, and this is a big match, and then The Rock gets the match with Hogan, where a lot of people talked about Austin Hogan being like the dream match, or Austin Goldberg. Everybody wanted to see Stone Cold fight Goldberg in the '90s,
Yeah.
and they couldn't get Goldberg because Goldberg went home and collected his paycheck with like a lot of the other WCW guys did. So Austin was like, I get Scott Hall, I get
Yeah.
washed up old Razor Ramon, and then to make it even worse, originally Scott Hall was going to win that match. When they got to the venue, you know, Scott Hall had been out all night drinking and was still like hungover,
Yep.
and Austin goes to McMahon and says, "Look, we're changing the finish. I'm not doing it." Whereas McMahon, as we found out later, McMahon had already changed the finish, but he just let Austin think that he, had changed his mind.
Yeah, pretty much.
Eh,
And I can see why he's frustrated,
Yeah,
because it's like, hey man, like if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have put WCW out of business. You wouldn't have won the war. You wouldn't
right.
have sold all of this merchandise. Your company would not have gone public. In fact, your company might have died.
Right. Absolutely.
Like, and it's just like, really, like you're gonna beat me in not that long of a match on Monday Night Raw with no advertisement whatsoever, no build up, no nothing. Like, he didn't mind putting over Lesnar. It's just like, I agree with him. It's like, if you're gonna have a King of the Ring tournament, why am I not facing him basically in the final of that? Why is it not me and him
Yeah, I mean, I get that they wanted to
or something?
establish Lesnar, right? I,
Right.
I mean, they wanted to do that, but they already had him like destroy the Hardy Boys 2-on-1, and he was tearing through the whole roster. Why would you not have that be a main event at a pay per view? Because that would have sold pay per view buys.
Yeah. And they always want to bring that. It's funny because they want to bring that up every time about Goldberg and Hogan on Nitro. And I'm just like, but y'all do that all the time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this was not the place to do it as a first time matchup. I mean, the Goldberg and Hogan thing on Nitro was very specifically to destroy Raw in the ratings that night and sell
Yeah.
out the Georgia Dome.
Yeah.
This was not calculated. This was just some junk that the writing team came up with at the last second, and it was awful. And I don't know that leaving was the right thing to do. I mean, I think what he should have done is gone and sat down with Vince face to face and explain where he came from. Now, if Vince is still wanting to do this at that point, then sure, to hell with it.
Yeah. Because you're not going to win.
Yeah,
And I get that. I don't know. But what I liked about it was, once again, he was very honest with everything.
right,
Like again, I don't have to sit there and be like, is Austin bullshitting? Because he's not. He clearly, like, this is what he feels and everything like that. Um, and so, he was very open about that. He said, I shouldn't have done that, basically. And it sucks because he let himself go during that time as well. Like, he started eating poorly. He drank a lot, like a lot more than what you saw and stuff like that. And he was having all those energy drinks and stuff like that, and he just was not taking care of himself, and you could tell.
right. Yeah, I mean, he ended up in the hospital. I mean, it's a big deal. And I think that him coming back, having that one last run, ending it, at the with the Rock at WrestleMania 19, and then kind of walking off into the sunset, so to speak. I mean, he came back and had, he was the sheriff of Raw, and did a bunch of those really cool things. But I really loved the him versus Bischoff
Oh yeah.
era. That whole thing was incredible.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Because
that was actually the co-GMs is probably one of my favorite eras in Raw history.
I can agree with that, because it was so damn entertaining.
Right.
It just was so funny, and he was able to show that side. And here's another thing: I can understand why he got frustrated with creative, because again, this is why I said, I kind of disagree with you about WrestleMania. Like he never should have gone uh full heel because it wasn't going to work. It was JR puts it, pretty much the right way. He says it's like turning John Wayne, into a Nazi. Who's going to buy that? No one. They're not going to buy it. And no one bought Stone Cold being a heel. It's like
Right.
they,
Pretty much the only person that they would cheer over him at the time was The Rock. And as we've talked about, The Rock left. And he
yeah,
wasn't there. Now, had it been, Austin joins up with McMahon to shit all over The Rock,
it
that's
might
a
work.
different thing. That would have worked. That's a different thing.
Exactly. It probably would have worked in that instance. However, he left to go do the movie, and then during the invasion angle they turn him face for 1 week, and then they have him go to the alliance angle because they need more star power in the WCW and ECW camp. I mean, you go back and you look at creative around that time, man, and it's just like, what the hell is wrong with y'all? Like, literally, you have some of the greatest storyline opportunities right in front of you. The fans are even trying to tell you what to book, and you're just not doing it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
it it was awful.
Yeah. So, I mean, we know how this story ends. We know that he got into doing the podcasting, which is incredible.
Oh
We
yeah.
know I really like that they showed what he started doing after the fact. Um, so that being said, what's your closing thoughts on this one, and what do you think about, are you, after seeing this one, are you excited for what's to come? Obviously, we have a bit of a 2 hour spoiler, that
Yeah.
everybody else isn't privy to. But just closing thoughts. What did you think about this?
Well, first of all, Stone Cold Steve Austin literally is one of my favorites of all time. It goes Sting first, but then right after him comes Stone Cold Steve Austin, because I remember like how much I remember as a kid, right? The Attitude Era and stuff like that. I wasn't really allowed to stay up and watch Monday Night Raw. I was able to watch like the Saturday morning shows where they would only talk about Austin versus McMahon, because anybody could watch that storyline. It didn't matter whether you were a kid or not. You could watch that storyline, and you could still relate to it and stuff like that. But I wasn't allowed to have like the videos or anything like that at the time. Yeah, back when they had VHSs and stuff like that. But for Christmas, right, I got the Austin versus McMahon video. And it's basically a documentary of Austin versus McMahon.
I remember that.
Yeah. That's probably my favorite video of all time, because it was the first wrestling video that I owned and stuff like that. And it had every cuss word, like it was uncensored,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Like,
Mine was the old WCW Best of DDP VHS tape,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that probably explains everything.
I got that after the fact, but I just like I remember I got that one thing, and then like I would get every Stone Cold Steve Austin action figure. I mean, he truly is probably the biggest star in the history of the business and everything, and I like the fact that they captured it. But it's funny if you really think about it. WWE's biggest star, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I mean, you could throw The Rock in there, but I'm saying in this instance, Stone Cold Steve Austin and WCW's biggest star, Goldberg, had almost the same amount of like on top,
Right.
which was not very long.
Well, that's the term, lightning in a bottle. You can't stretch anything that good out forever. If
Yeah.
let's just say Austin never retired, and he's still wrestling full time in 2010, 2015. it's not going to be as good. Look at how long Cena was on top, and how many years, not episodes, how many years of that did you just want to claw your eyes out every time he came on camera? You
Yeah,
you always want to leave them wanting more and not the other way around.
yeah.
They can't miss you if you won't go away, is the saying.
And you know, that's funny because Austin went away. I mean,
Yeah,
he went away for a year. And remember, like, that's why I said it was definitely a bad idea to turn him heel because he went away and people were like, oh, he's back now. And since The Rock's going away, well, now we can fall in love with Austin again, kind of thing.
right. Yeah, I mean, you can't stretch anything out like that forever. It doesn't work today like it did, in the '80s when they did it with Hogan. And even then, Hogan was on top for the longest, but back then you didn't see every week Hulk Hogan wasn't coming out and having a match for the title or anything.
Exactly.
Whereas today it's like, oh, we got to put these people got to be in front of a camera for 22 minutes a week. You know, most sane people don't look in the mirror for that long. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. No, I agree. In fact, I've said that about wrestling for a while now. It's like I don't even understand why they're every single week and why they don't take a break. Because, I mean, let's take Game of Thrones, for instance. I'm not talking about the ending or whatnot, but remember every year that Game of Thrones took a seasonal break, like after the season finale, how much of a buildup then was the next season?
right? And just that's the perfect analogy because if they had if they had closed it up before they did, they just had to get that one more season in there, and it ruined everything.
Yeah.
They could have taken their ball and gone home, and people would still be there. Would be people having massive panels at conventions wanting the show to come back.
Well, I mean, you could even look at a show like The Mandalorian and stuff like that. How much are we all like dying to see season 3 right now?
Right, and we got like 8 months before it starts.
Exactly. But
So
it's kind of like, why doesn't wrestling take a break? So
right,
that,
yeah, I would love for wrestling to have seasons. I would
yeah,
absolutely love for them to have a season and to run you know, like March to November.
yeah,
You'd have to move WrestleMania around because you can't start with your biggest show. You'd have to swap like Survivor Series and WrestleMania, but that
yeah,
that would be fantastic. And then you'd have a break. Everybody would get to go home, and I think it would do the industry a ton of good.
yeah,
And then but I think that goes back to that endless competition. It's like, okay, if WWE closes down for 3 months and doesn't run anything, right? Then first off, their advertising partners will lose their mind. But second off, you've got, you know, what's AEW going to be doing? What's NWA going to be doing? What's New Japan going to be doing? Other people are going to be running during that time. So,
yeah. But I mean, to me, that could help everything.
yeah.
Even, it just, I just think there does need to be
Oh, I
a
agree.
break in it because I mean, before we wrap up, we forgot to mention that it focused a lot of that on Stone Cold Steve Austin, which he's never really kind of talked about that much in interviews and stuff like that. He doesn't really talk about his divorce or his daughters or anything like that, or how much of a strain that took on his family life.
Right.
Because I mean, you could tell that, you know.
And I think it's still pretty strange because they could have had them on, but they weren't there.
Yeah.
So, and you talked about them being in the UK and everything, and that might have been a part of it. Travel restrictions and things right now, but
Well, yeah, it could
you
have
know.
been.
But anyway, this one was a blast to do.
Yeah.
We want to go ahead and wrap it up. The next one that we're going to be recording is the Booker T episode. However, the next one that's going to be airing on A&E is actually going to be the Roddy Piper one. That's coming up this coming Sunday. We will be covering all of these, and that's going to lead us right back up into Dark Side of the Ring, season 3, which we are incredibly excited for.
I'm excited
Um,
about this whole thing, man. I mean,
yeah,
Roddy Piper is up next. Like, dude, this is one of the first times that they have announced a series where I am generally excited about seeing every single person in these documentaries. Yes.
the Mick Foley episode especially, I think that's the one that I may be looking forward to the most.
Oh, I mean, dude, I can't pick which one at this point I'm more excited about. I mean, because even the Dark Side of the Ring, there were some that we didn't cover because they were just not that interesting.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, especially from I think we did everything. No, no, so we
oh,
skipped a few in season 2 as well. Yeah,
oh
they
yeah.
were just they were rough. There was a couple that we didn't want to talk about them for for
Well,
40 minutes or whatever.
I knew nothing about them and stuff like
Right.
that. But all of these guys that they're talking about in this Legends series, I know everything about these guys. Well,
That,
almost everything, but
almost
I
everything.
I know, I like these are guys that I grew up watching and stuff like that. So this is going to be fun. I'm excited for the Rowdy Piper one. I am excited for the Mick Foley one, the Shawn Michaels one, Randy Savage. God, dude, like it's so good. I can't
Yeah,
wait. I
agreed.
cannot wait, and I can't wait for Dark Side of the Ring, like you said, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Caleb, thanks for joining me here on the show each and every week.
Absolutely.
We're gonna be back very quickly, to cover these as they come out each and every week too. So, yeah, thanks for being here, and as always, this has been an Evolved Review.